industrial aspect, and there were pictures of Arizona with like buildings,
Yeah.
factories and stuff.
Yes.
What is this? You know?
You're imagining the Old
Arizona.
West and
Yes,
That's
that was a
funny.
disappointment. But other than that, there were, stories about Joe DiMaggio and the New York Yankees and baseball, and there's a lot of things like that that went into American lives. But they really, I had this feeling at an early age, I think, in England, that in America it all seemed to be free, and people did seem to have an opportunity, to if they worked hard and had the right stuff and all that kind of stuff. And I really did see in England that if you, even if you did stuff like that, that if you didn't talk right, if your accent wasn't, if you were strictly Yorkshire, talking Yorkshire dialect and all that stuff, you probably weren't going to go that far, because you didn't belong in the upper class type of thing. And even the upper class with a lot of money, because of doing the same things as Americans were doing, maybe building a business and all that. Even they had to sort of accommodate to the way of behavior, of the upper classes, And of course, if you were able to get into that thing, okay, but the majority of people don't, But so I looked at the United States, and it seemed to me that there were these the dead end kids and all that stuff, but they were being sort of promoted as not the norm,
Fringe.
The norm were going to high school, and they were America. They were raising the flag and all that kind of stuff. And it was a completely different feeling. But I say, even now when I look back, my view of American life after living here for 65 years, there are still things about American life that I say, they don't do that in England, and I'm saying to myself, I kind of agree with the English way. I still have a feeling that English justice is better than American justice, as practiced here. The laws may be better, the laws may say things, but I have a feeling, and I keep on thinking to myself, I ought to write to the newspaper and say, how about an article about crime in England and in the United States, and not just crime, but the punishment of crime. And I think the punishment of crime here is excessive. I think, but we read these things about some guy, being convicted of something, and he's off for 25 years, or some other thing, much lesser crimes, 10 years. I said, 10 years, but it seems to be the norm, and then in a lot of these states and cities, they're complaining about the high cost of incarceration, and that they've got, the criminal element in the prisons are overabundant, and they have to keep pouring money into the prison systems, I say, that's right, because you've got too many damn people in there, they shouldn't be in there. And I was very encouraged just recently, where somebody in some state was taking a look at the marijuana situation.
In California.
People are in prison for months or years for possession of 2 ounces of whatever, And I said, that's completely ridiculous, And how much is that costing the public, But I was very encouraged that they were looking at something like that, of course with the cost in mind, or reducing the cost, but to get that kind of make it more of a what's the probation, well they keep these guys or girls certainly under watch, but they're not in prison all the time and all that. They have to report in, say that they're making progress or they're not, that type of thing, And some of these, they're going to take a look at the laws. folks probably, you know, for 200 years, when everybody was walking around carrying a gun, and so they made laws on that. And that's the other thing that I think of when I'm being critical about the laws in this country regarding guns and so on and so forth, and comparing it to England, where the bobbies are still walking around with a little truncheon and no guns,
Right.
you know.
Right.
But I said to myself, you've got to understand the background of this country versus England. You know, this country being so big and so wide open for a long time out west, where life developed, and the law enforcement wasn't there, but crime was, and so people used to wear guns as in a defensive way. You know, that kind of thing never happened in England. I mean, there was completely different circumstances, and you have to understand that.
Well, why did that not happen in England then?
Because it was a much smaller country, and there was not the wide open. Well, there were for a few hundred years ago in England, you know, with the highwayman and all that
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
But there were the laws were closer because the people were closer together, and you know, the source of power was closer. In Texas and Arizona, where was the local law enforcement agency? Well, you know, like 150 miles down the road, you know, something like that. You know, the sheriffs didn't. I'm exaggerating, but that's the point I'm making, is that the law enforcement was not.
But
I wanna-
you like this way of life. You like this way of life better than
I want to get back
UK, right?
to, how about the passion of
You
when you,
like this.
Yes,
You
but
know,
I don't want to live in where the guns are the norm.
No, I know.
when did you get a passion for jazz, or when did you find your life's passion? Like when you came to New York?
Jazz, well, with
Discovered-
jazz, with music, it was when I was about 15 or 16. But that was based on this country, where people, you know, when I wanted to play the saxophone,
Yeah.
and one guy go to the saxophone teacher, and he says, "Oh, saxophone, okay. Now you got to listen to." Who was it? Well, there was an English guy in there, Freddie Gardner. Listen to Freddie Gardner; he's a very good player. But Coleman Hawkins, Benny Carter, you know.
And you were
listen to those
listening?
guys. Yeah.
On the
In fact,
radio, or?
that record we have? Well, yes,
We have it framed.
and there was being played jazz on the radio, and not only that, there was broadcasts coming from the United States through the BBC, but you know, I remember Harry James on the Steel Pier in Atlantic City, you know, that kind of thing. I was listening to big bands and the soloists, and I thought that was just great. But it was the interest in the saxophone that got me interested in how do you play it in that way, you know. So that was my interest in
When
jazz.
was that? What year? What?
Oh, well, I was like 15, say.
But then you played saxophone and you played trombone too. You switched to trombone after that.
That was later when I came over.
Oh yeah, but you were in the RAF. I mean, you left that and you became a man basically, and you joined the army, and
But
then
I still listen to jazz, and when I was in near Calcutta in India, I was at Dum Dum Airport, and we used to every morning there was a truck, and it would truck me and other guys out to this transmitting station, about 10 miles away. It's a big an RAF transmitting station that, you know, handled traffic between Calcutta and Bombay, New Delhi, and, you know, wherever else the RAF was in business. And so the transmitters in it, this is I don't know whether I mentioned this or not, but this is kind of a little side thing, which I think is a kind of a cute thing to say, you know, but it's true, it's true. When I got there, all these big transmitters, just about every one of them had been made by RCA.
Isn't that funny?
And so I modified
wonder
my
you-
ambition. Not only did I want to be in America, but I was going to work for RCA.
Good
No
for you.
kidding.
Look at that.
you like that little dog too, probably on the record.
Nipper, yeah, that's right. Sure. So anyway,
So you're saying the transmitters or the antennas or what?
well,
What was
is that, when
RCA? What was it?
before I went to India,
Yeah.
I was in the RAF, and fortunately, I overcame this thing about saying to me. They used to say, No, we can't do anything really for you because you're colorblind. See? So,
I don't know
and
how that works.
I'm sure that
The
kind
red,
of,
green, blue wires, who cares?
that kept me out of the air crew.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Wow.
that was unfortunately
Right.
that's probably saved my life.
Yeah, probably, Dad.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean.
And ours.
That's right.
But what were the odds that you'd come back alive if you were one of those pilots,
Very,
right?
very little.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
The ratio
right.
was
But anyway,
pretty
I think I've told you this
Never
story
thought of
many
that.
times. I went down to this withering near Peterborough in England, and it was a joint RAF U.S. Air Force base, and but that wasn't really the point as far as the Americans. But I welcomed the other Americans because I was smoking already. See.
Oh, yeah.
And I wanted to smoke American cigarettes, see, 'cause
Oh,
that was
God.
the thing. See.
Good
And
grief.
so there was a little Irish GI, you know,
Mhm.
and so I went into the barracks where the GIs were, you know,
Mm.
and to buy some of these Lucky Strikes, see,
The
worst.
Really?
Luckies, you know, because I heard on the radio, you know, Jack Benny, you know. And sold American, that was
Sold?
Lucky Strike
What?
cigarettes.
Sold
you know.
American? What do you mean
So-
sold?
That was the way.
Oh, sold American. Oh.
Yeah, that's when they, I guess that's from the tobacco sales.
Yeah, they were
people,
auctioning
they
off
auction
tobacco
off
leaves and
tobacco.
things, you know,
Really?
in this country, in Virginia.
And they'd all be
So
bidding
whole
on it.
American,
Sold
American Tobacco Company, it was what that was, see.
Okay.
And they had bought all this. But anyway, getting back to the other, in that, there was you know, they had me assigned, I was on a night shift on the beam approach system. The system, if there were the runways here, you know, like at the, about maybe a mile or so at the end of this runway, there was a van, had its own power system in there. And then back about 4 or 5 miles back, there was another van that had a similar part of the system. So that when the airplanes would come around and they were looking like at nighttime, and they were looking for the landing strip and the best way to land, they would turn on their beam approach system in the airplane, and they were looking first of all for a certain tone sequence of the outer beam, you see, and so then they would try and get their system so that the beam was the loudest, and so that they were over this beam coming in from the,
okay.
and then when they got a little bit further in, they came over the one that I was in, and that had a different kind of a sequence. That was the inner beam, and so they knew that they were pretty close to the runway, and so it was called beam approach. See? So anyway, I was in that
Beam
van.
approach.
It had a little transmitter inside, and it was just running all the time. And
No kidding. And you had to just make sure it worked.
well, that's why I was there. I was
Yeah,
just a human being they put in there. Yeah.
Mhm,
But anyway, after a while, I went to this warrant officer, and I said, you know, I said, I know that you're sending people off to wireless school, and these guys have no interest in wireless, not like me, you know. But now with my colorblindness, and I can't get. So he said, well, that's right. He said, in radio and all that stuff, he said, all this color coding wires, you know. And he said, how are you going to make out? How could you work and repair them with all these different wires of different colors that tell you something, you know?
Yeah,
So I said, I've seen those wires, and I know. I said they are very brilliantly, set up. Red is, boy, you could tell that was red. And I said, I'm not completely colorblind. You know, I have a certain kind of colorblindness.
Snowed him, did you?
But I can see a red from a blue.
Yeah.
And and I said, if I got into real trouble, I'd ask somebody.
Yeah,
And they could say, well, that's yellow, or green.
So you
or-
talked somebody into something then?
I did.
Oh, that's
And
great.
he said, okay.
family.
I'm sure he didn't say, okay, you sold me, but he were words to that effect, you know.
Yeah.
And then,
All right,
next thing I knew, I was being sent off to Glasgow, to the Royal Technical College for the 6-month course in electronics, you know. Well, that was great. And we were all there. We were all in a warehouse. We were built in Glasgow with the warehouses. And fortunately, when you looked out the window of our warehouse, I was on the 4th or the 5th floor somewhere, you know.
Yeah.
when you looked across, and there's a, yeah, between that and the next building, in the next building, there was offices, and there was one building right just about across from us. All girls were in there, you know. They were, I don't know what they were doing. I never found out what they were doing. But they were interested in all these RAF guys coming in the other side, you know, waving, you know, making hand signs, you know. It's fun, see. So I took a couple of those girls.
Oh, you did, okay.
But
Did
anyway.
you ask them what they were doing in the building?
No.
I didn't care.
They may have told me.
Could care less.
It was
Didn't
a
want to
real-
mess up a good thing.
It was
Wait,
a real consequence.
were they English girls or were
Yeah,
they?
yeah.
Really?
Scottish, no, not English, Scottish.
Ooh,
Scottish.
Scottish,
Scottish.
eh?
They was in Glasgow. But anyway, after that,
Take me.
then I was sent down to Bolton in Lancashire for a
You are
3-month
rough.
training course there on specific equipment that I'd be working on in the aircraft. See, there was transmitters and receivers in all the RAF airplanes, of course, you know. And so I had to learn how to repair those. And so after that, I was sent to. Now that I was checked out, I was a wireless mechanic now. And I was sent to a little place up in the Lake District, right on the beach.
Okay.
And they were Avro Anson airplanes, 2-engine bombers. That the Canadians.
Avro Anson.
Yeah. It was
Okay.
Avro was the manufacturer, and Anson was the type of plane. See?
Oh, okay.
But the Canadians were there, the Canadian pilots, and they were training the Canadians on these. And the airplane had all the similar equipment in them that the big Lancaster bombers had. See?
Yeah.
So they were being checked out on their radios, and I was responsible for maintaining some of that, you know, the radio equipment in the airplanes. So I'd go out, and then, but there were, you know, there were WAF, there were women's auxiliary air force WAF mechanics there. See. So when I'd go out, I'd have my toolbox, and I'd go out of the hangars, and I was assigned to, you know, work on this particular aircraft that day. And then the girls working on the engines, see, of the airplanes. See.
I think Dad liked the girls. What do you
So,
think?
yeah, I had Nancy was her name.
Oh.
Nancy with a laughing face.
Play
maybe.
Nancy
No.
with a laughing face, huh?
So anyway, though, and I was there at the time of D-Day. When
Oh,
we
you
got
were?
up that
Really?
morning.
Oh, my
Yeah.
gosh. What?
You skipped over the part about where you and Arthur were,
I hadn't even met Arthur yet.
oh, okay.
That was in India, right?
This is
Yeah.
the first month? Well, he met Arthur.
Yeah,
then.
but that was when I was in the cruise
He's
ship.
still in
But
Scotland.
anyway,
okay.
D-Day happened, and boy, were we,
A long
you know, thanking
story.
our lucky stars that we were where we were, you know, and rather than down, you know, in the southern part of England, on the you know, the landing craft and all that stuff, because the RAF certainly didn't go over there, but not on the first wave, you know. But anyway, the next thing that would happen really of any consequence there was that I was sent to India. And, you know, there's no explanation as to why I was going to India or what I was going to be doing. But, no, okay, apparently somebody decided we need so many of the different type of, you know, in India. So many different.
But wait a minute. You were in Dum Dum Airport, weren't you?
That was an earlier
that
part of
was
the
like-
story when I was illustrating my later life
Oh, okay.
in India.
So where were you first? Where was this other?
So he was in
I was
Scotland.
in England.
Oh, okay.
I was in the Air Force from November of
I want to know about
1942,
New York.
Okay.
1942, and then I went to India in 1944.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
So, and then I was in India until 1947.
Mm-hmm.
2.5 years there. But anyway, so we go land at Bombay, and then ship down to a place about 300 miles south of Bombay. And this was a training place to train RAF and Indian Air Force people on mobile radio systems. These are vans and big vans with transmitters and radios, but also we had to teach them how to put up these antennas. There were these big masts that went up in the jungle, see, to form an antenna. And so that the mobile radios could transmit back to base, wherever that was. And so there was, it was training them on this, all this different type of equipment. Well, Arthur, and I didn't know Arthur at the time, see, but I knew a little bit of it. We were in the same barracks together right off the bat. But then we were found that we were
Very much.
we're in this training environment of the radio equipment, and that we were both pretty sharp on this stuff, you know. That we know all about this, and so we found that there weren't too many other people who were. And so I honestly don't remember whether we sort of wangled our way in, or whether somebody just recognized our talent, so to speak.
I think you wangled your way in.
And so they made they instructors. See, well, Arthur and I
Great.
no desire to go to Burma, which was the next stop. See, the Japanese were
My.
in the jungle. See, so
Ooh,
yeah,
sounds scary.
I'll tell you another funny thing. I've never mentioned this to anybody else, but when we arrived in Bombay, we went into they sort of checked us in there, and they then sent us to a large restaurant, and so when we were in this restaurant, and of course, being English, what did we want right away? We wanted egg and chips. And because in England there were very few eggs available, you know, in the wartime. So it came from England, and egg and chips, and everybody was ordering fried eggs and French fries. Is what it was, you know, eggs and French fries. But anyway, the point there was that at the
That's
time we
why
were
that
there,
became one of our meals, I guess.
at
The house.
Yeah.
We had eggs and
French
fries.
fries.
Yeah, okay.
Never
But
thought
It's all
of that.
becoming very clear.
The thing I wanted to mention here was that at the time we were in there, and we were all just off the boat, you know, then a whole bunch of other RAF guys came in to the same restaurant, and they were on their way home, see? And these guys, well, most of them really looked like tough guys, you know, really beat guys, you know. They had these wide brim hats with this side turned up, you know, like the Aussies used to wear. And they all came into this place. But, and then this, I'd never seen anything like this. There were some guys came in, and you could tell that they were homosexuals. See?
Oh, gosh.
I mean, they had like, some of them had makeup on, you know.
The Aussies?
No, the
Oh.
British, the RAF
Oh.
guys.
Whoa.
Because they'd been up in Burma in the jungles, you know, for years. Well,
Oh, no.
years.
Oh,
Mm.
Years.
Oh.
I looked at that and I thought, oh my God, you know. And I thought, I suppose, you know, when they're in that environment out there, there's no women, of course, you know. But that's what happens. And so, oh, geez. So that was another reason I didn't want to go.
But you like girls
Anywhere but Burma.
But anyway, Arthur and I became friendly, you see, that in this place down 300 miles south of Bombay. Arthur and I became friends.
But not that friendly.
No, no. But then, then the war ended. See, this was now into 1945, and we'd been there for several months in India, and the war ended.
Yeah.
So I just didn't mean at all that we were going to go home soon, you know. But Arthur's parents had this business in, you know, outside of London. It was a radio business, and they were selling funds.
Yeah.
And so his mother appealed to the government to have her son sent home to help out with the business that she was running into trouble in. And now that the war was over, how about it? So, okay, they worked it to what they called compassionate leave, see. And so he went home. And you know, it was a long
But
time.
it didn't take that long for you to become really good friends.
No. Yeah,
You
no.
were, so you only had about 6 months together.
Yeah, that's right.
Isn't that
Now,
funny?
when he came, he went home.
But they became lifelong friends.
Yeah, isn't that cool?
Yeah.
That's
When he
cool.
went home, he and his parents wanted to keep in touch with me, I guess, or he did, and so they contacted my parents. Now, we weren't really close. I mean, we were like 200 miles north of London, and but nevertheless, they got together. See, and that's how the House Simpson thing began.
And was he an only child?
No,
Sheila.
no, she.
Oh, what am I thinking?
Is this
Yeah.
the guy you just
Doggone,
sent
of course.
photos?
Forrest, Sheila.
Yeah,
We've got,
Who
yeah,
I'm
we,
friends with.
Uncle Arthur.
Yeah,
He's
Uncle
our-
Arthur.
He ended up being close with everybody.
yeah,
Well, with our family, he visited a few times
Yeah.
when we were
came
kids.
over, yeah. And then, of course, Corey went over and spent her.
Yeah.
Mm.
I lost my mind
With
for
them,
Of course,
see, with
I'm
that
good
family.
friends with
Do you
Sheila.
have pictures?
Yeah,
Oh.
well, some, long time ago, I guess. I don't know where they are, but
yeah.
I have them.
Yeah. But I tell you,
Not too many,
there's another
so,
interesting
long
story, Jeff. I don't think I've ever told you. That's why I'm saying Jeff, because it has to do with jazz. When I went to I left that place south of Bombay,
Yeah.
and they sent me to another place out near Calcutta, and the north of. I don't know why I was sent there, but that was the American Air Force had been there, so that was an airfield that had stuff in there. But it was mostly. I just didn't know what we were doing there, but this friend of mine was a truck driver. And he had responsibilities for trucking stuff between this Salbani and Calcutta. So I got to ride with him a couple of times and went to Calcutta, you know.
Mhm.
But anyway, then I was transferred to Calcutta itself, and to the airport outside of Dum Dum Airport, to the big airways. But anyway, then it was at that time that I was able to get a hold of a receiver, a shortwave receiver that came out of the American. It came out of one of the American bombers. And of course, the power supply was no good, but I was sharp at that stuff. I just converted it into an AC,
Adapter.
AC thing.
Yeah.
So I was able to have it in my barracks there.
Oh,
So,
my.
so I was able to tune in. I tuned in to the U.S. base in Manila, in the Philippines, where the theme that guy had every night was Bobby Sherwood and his band.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and Bobby Sherwood's theme was terrible. I can't remember. Oh, Elks Parade. Elks Parade was his thing. But then another guy I came across in the afternoons was a British major in Ceylon, and every afternoon he was playing jazz, and he was playing current jazz. I heard Woody Herman's First Heard. In fact, the tune I played on Saturday, I reckon I played on Saturday.
And that was
Goosey
new.
Gander.
That was new at the time.
Yeah, it was new at the time. And I heard that Goosey
That's
Gander
wild.
that I played, and I mentioned on Saturday, I said, hey, I said, when I first, I said, what's happening to big band sounds, you know, because that was a completely different kind of
But you
arrangement.
liked it.
Oh, yeah, I did, yeah.
It was
There were
progressive.
A lot of people that didn't
It
like
was
it
progressive.
because it was
Yeah.
getting away
That's
from the
right.
dance music.
And the use of the brass section and the saxophone, it was
a whole new
But
twist.
this
ahead
was
of its
this
time,
was not
really.
so much dance music anymore.
But hey, I haven't got to throw the thing there. So every afternoon, and I was Joe Simpson at the time. So you see, call me G.I. Joe. Because I even went to this extent. This is at the other place, the earlier place. I went to. They had the Indians had a tailor on the base, you know, a tailor. So I went to him and I had him make me shirts that were cut in the GI way.
Oh, you're kidding.
No.
Wow.
He was serious.
That was a
I would
passion.
have looked
He
like a
was
GI.
serious.
Wow.
Look at this.
And then I found a place. I guess maybe somebody bought it for me. But baseball gloves. I had bought 2 gloves, and there was a barracks next to ours that was vacant. See, so okay, I
So you
had
played
a
in the
baseball,
vacant barrack.
and I used to go and say, hey, come on, you know, let's go and
Let's
play
play
ball,
catch.
see. So we went in this other vacant barracks, which is kind of long, you know,
Yeah.
and we'd throw the ball at each
Oh,
other, you know,
great.
with
Oh,
our gloves,
great.
you know.
And were there movies
Oh,
at the
that's
time
great.
that like influenced you to like want to be like a GI Joe, or was it just people you saw on the street Probably
there were
movies.
movies at the time.
that really
Oh,
did
yeah.
influence you?
Oh yeah.
Even baseball movies.
Okay, but
Babe Ruth.
there's a really cute, ending to this. No, not ending. There's a package.
There's no end.
I used to write to this guy, and the army guy in Ceylon, you know, and ask him to play something that I'd heard, like Goosey Gander, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
And this is from Joe Simpson, you know.
Ah,
And so he announced me on the radio. He said, "Well, I got
did?
somebody's out." No, he
oh
really
my
did. Yeah.
gosh,
There's
look
Joe
at
up in Dum Dum, you know, and no kidding. This is in
That's cool.
1945.
Oh my gosh.
46.
Big deal, right?
46.
And
Six.
where were they? Where were they? And how did you call?
In Ceylon. It was on
On
short
the
wave.
ham
See,
radio. On the radio.
I had in my
shortwave
radio, I came across jazz. Yeah,
Isn't that
Where's that coming
cool?
from? This guy, and I used Ross. I used to know his name,
That's
but I tell you what, his
That must have been like, well, let me just say, that must have been like somebody, like an astronaut from the Mir aircraft calling into the Car Talk show, which they did. And they were going 25,000 miles an hour, they were saying.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Hold your hat on.
okay. Years later now, I was now a member of the International Association of Jazz Record Collectors, see? And Vic Hall
Yeah.
was there, and you know, he and I were friends now. See?
Yep.
And so we used to go to these conventions. We went to a convention in Kansas City, and because I went to Charlie Parker's grave in Kansas City, and then of course the big thing about Kansas City for most Americans, well a lot of them anyway, is the barbecue, the ribs. They have restaurants that feature nothing else but ribs. You know? So we were there, and to go there, one of the members of the has his own car. You know, he left. You know, we flew there. You know, but he was living maybe in the next state or something, so he had his own car. So okay, there 3 or 4 or 5, maybe six of us piled into this car, going to this rib joint. See?
Oh, you're
So
kidding.
we're going along, and suddenly one of these guys turns around and he says, "Hey, Coover," he said, "how on earth did you get involved in jazz? You know, coming from India like you do." See, this was Kuba Gazdar, who was an Indian. He's an Indian, yeah.
Okay.
And so he said, "Well, I'll tell you." He says, I was in Bangalore," and I said, "Bangalore? That's where I used to go and leave. You know, when I was." And when I was in the first place,
Wow.
I used to go down to Bangalore. It was a larger town. Now it's a big city, where if you have a problem with your computer and you call service, you probably talk to a guy in Bangalore. You know. But anyway, he said, "Oh, I grew up in Bangalore." He said, "When I was a kid," he said, "I heard somebody on the radio. He said they were playing jazz," and he said, "The kind of thing that they were playing should really." You know, got to me. And I said, "You were listening to jazz in Bangalore?" And he said, "Oh yeah." He said, there's a British Army station in Ceylon."
Oh my God.
Yeah, you used to dedicate to this guy named Joe.
That's too much.
You're
Wow.
joking.
So
That's
that was,
cool.
and he
That's
was
cool.
an expert in jazz.
Probably the same day.
I was reading liner notes a couple of weeks ago, and it was written by Kuba Gazdar. Yeah.
No kidding.
But he's dead now. He died a few years
Yeah,
ago.
I met him. He was a nice
Nice guy.
real nice fellow.
But I told him, I said, we were listening to the same station probably at the same time, you know.
The liner notes on what then?
Well, on a jazz, I mean, he's
A jazz album?
He
Yeah.
became a real expert, real jazz.
Really?
yeah, oh yeah,
Isn't that something?
sure.
Huh,
And you did too.
that's cool.
And it's just amazing how
Yeah,
things
I
turn
thought
around.
that was a real.
I wonder if he heard that you were G.I. Joe, if you would have mentioned.
Tell
Yeah,
him the
right.
story about Arthur writing to you and saying, or maybe sending you the letter to the magazine editor, saying that someone had written in, you know, and said, whatever happened to G.I. Joe, who used to be whistling all these tunes, going from one place to another, you know, his jazz
You're
tunes.
kidding.
Yeah, and that's her,
Really?
right?
Well, that's
That's
right.
how you first.
Yes, that's right. In that same place. Now I forgot to tell you this. Is that I got that there was a mess hall, and on the other side of the mess hall was the movies, and there were movies every night in this place, you know. and Arthur wasn't involved, but there was some other guy who said, hey, you know, I like the movies, you know, so maybe I can get an in into this movie business. And so I used to help him load the film. This was the 35 millimeter
Reels.
movies, reels.
Yeah,
you know.
reels,
So I
yeah.
helped him to change and then
Mhm.
learn how to look for the thing that comes up in the screen where you turn the other projector on.
Yeah,
know,
you
so
put the penny in so that, you know, at the end of the reel it flips out and then you know it's the end and you can wake up.
Well, whatever. So then I sort of became.
I know what you're talking about.
I became involved to the point where then I wanted to run this records. You know, they had records playing music in the meal times, and so I became a disc jockey, and yeah, they say, hey, who's that Yank? They used to say, who's that Yank playing playing?
Because he was
not jazz,
already
but-
putting on this American
Yeah,
accent.
that's right.
Right.
Oh,
Who's the Yank in this?
and what year is this?
This is 1946. No, 45 probably.
Oh,
You were-
even
you were-
earlier
You were
than.
spinning records in the mess hall.
Yes, that's right.
In
Yeah.
the mess hall.
And
Really?
announcing, you know,
Huh.
the title of the next one, you know, and so they
So you got a little experience. Look at that. See, I never heard that one.
I don't think
And-
I did.
see, as I'm talking about it, I
Huh.
just visualize that whole scene, and I remember some of the movies.
But tell about Norman Day. I
Oh,
want you to
Norman Day. That's
finish
right.
that story about this guy was looking for Dad through an RAF military magazine, and Arthur subscribed to this magazine. He saw this letter in there, and he told either he sent Dad a copy of it, or he told Dad, wrote Dad and told him that this guy named Norman Day was looking for him, and said whatever
that's
happened
right.
to Joe Simpson, he called
Yeah.
him.
Joseph.
No,
Yeah.
kidding.
Norman
We
Day,
did
huh?
eventually meet up with Norman Day. He lived in Bexhill-on-Sea near Jean.
We met.
Bexhill?
Yes,
Right,
we met
we
him.
got
She
together
also
with
Many
him.
lived in
Christmas.
Bexhill.
We got together with
Yeah.
him. Norman, old Norman, right?
Right.
Yeah.
We meet with him and his family or
No,
something?
his wife wasn't there. He,
Or
she
somebody,
was,
we
she
met
was
with
sick.
somebody, his
Yeah.
daughter?
I think his daughter.
Daughter.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but Norman, well, this was it. I mentioned this place that I went to before Calcutta, where we used to drive trucks into
Yeah.
Calcutta. There was that place that Norman was there,
Mm.
and when I met Norman, we found out that we both liked jazz, but we liked different kind of jazz. So he was earlier kind of jazz, you know, the Sidney Bechet,
Dixieland.
Dixieland.
Yeah.
Or,
Okay.
yeah,
And
traditional.
he said he's got a little group.
Yeah,
He still has it.
Yeah,
He sent Dad recording
Norman
sets,
Day?
played them on
Norman
the air.
Day,
Good
yeah.
grief.
And
Yeah,
they
right.
still talk on the telephone.
And what does he
Yeah.
play? What instrument?
Piano.
he played piano. Yeah.
Okay, so I wanna know, after you got back from the RAF, how long were you in UK before you went to England?
No.
No,
in the
in
I mean,
the
before
US
you went
of
to
A.
In the
US.
United States, yeah.
Before I
It was-
haven't had my
I
second
got
cup
home
of tea.
from India in May, I think, of June, or May. I think the discharge paper says May, in
Mm,
47.
okay, 47.
And we applied for an exit visa, whatever visa to the United States,
Yeah.
and also transportation.
Yeah.
Now, at that time, and I suppose even now, there's a visa system and getting an immigration visa, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And very few people were immigrating to the United States. All these guys coming out.
Really?
No, they wanted to go to a Commonwealth country, Canada, Australia, New Zealand,
Ah.
South Africa.
Oh, yeah, right.
Not me, I wanted to go to U.S., you know. And so I had no problem with getting a visa, you know, through the American
Okay.
embassy.
Okay.
And the problem was with the transportation. Couldn't get a flight from London to New York until
Oh,
December.
wait 1 minute.
So, so you asked
This
how
one's
long?
tied
Well,
all together, isn't it? 1 minute.
it was about 6 months, 6, 7 months. I
6
was
months?
in, yeah.
Really? So you got back, and then 6 months later, you were off to the States?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. And my
Wow.
mother, you know, I
Wow.
know my mother and dad didn't really want to see me go after
No.
being gone for 2.5
Oh,
months.
my
Wow, I can
gosh.
imagine.
But nevertheless,
Yeah, they understood.
yes,
And an
and,
only
and my
child.
mother,
Oh.
helped me as much as I could. And my grandmother,
Yeah.
who had died since I'd gone,
Oh.
left me like £100 or something.
Oh, nice.
At that time it was the equivalent of $300.
Okay.
And so it may have been more than that. Maybe it was, but I never really did find out how much
That's
she
the
left
same
me.
thing.
But maybe it was able to pay for my transportation on Pan Am.
Oh,
That was quite a healthy
wow,
sum
that's
back then,
great.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I ended up. I had there was $100, I think. No, it was $300. I started out with in New York, and it was in the bank. I used to know the name of the bank. It was a famous bank.
But you went to Bronx.
Oh no,
Well, we're getting into the
We're
girl
getting
thing,
into
this
our-
is another long story, and
No,
I
no,
gotta.
no, no, no. Well, but okay, for
You know about the
skip
girl.
skip the girl thing. Go.
I don't know
Okay,
about
so
the girl.
Bronx. What's the timing now?
I can
So
tell you.
Bronx,
I wanna know about the
you got
jazz
the job
angle.
at RCA.
Yeah.
Bronx, you got the job at RCA.
Not right away, he went to an insurance
No.
company.
Oh,
first.
insurance.
He was-
No,
No.
I didn't know that either.
I was telling somebody this story the other day.
Ah.
I don't know how I got involved in that. Oh, I know it was. I got there and I was living in the Bronx because this girl was also
Yeah.
living in the
Yeah,
Bronx.
yeah,
And so I
Always
had
a
to
gal.
get
Girl
employment
had a name?
immediately. You know,
Nancy.
I was paying
Nancy.
$7 a week. You know,
With the
for
laughing
No,
face.
furnished
no.
room.
This one, no, that was a
Good
different.
grief.
$7 a week
$7
Not
a
as
week.
beautiful as Lorraine.
for a furnished room. See?
Jeez.
And,
She was just
and
a
I had to have a radio.
You let
So
her
I
in.
never heard that.
I bought a radio for $11.88
Oh, my.
on the time not payment. I was paying it off.
Now, Dad,
I didn't pay it off.
I just
Great.
gotta envision this. You came over here, did you have any connections? Did you know where you were gonna live?
This girl.
Oh, that
She
girl,
was the
that's
girl.
right, Mary,
Yeah.
Mary,
Yeah.
okay.
But they,
She was
you
a
know,
pen pal article.
That's right.
So how long did that last? You got
well,
the
I got
apartment and
I
then,
got the job, and that, and I don't know why I was on the subway at the time, but yes, it was in the paper. I bought the paper, and I was looking for employment, and I came across this. It was Phoenix, London Insurance Company, see, on Fifth Avenue. So I said, hey, Phoenix, London, probably get a job there, you know,
Perfect.
being English. And,
Yeah.
yeah. So I did. I got a job right away. It was
Did you put on your English accent?
I just remembered why I was thinking about this just the other day. That was on Fifth Avenue, just south of 14th Street, and that was a new experience. I got my first paycheck, and I said, what do I do with this? Well, he says, you got to have a bank account. He says, go across the street to the bank there. He said, when you have a check, he said, they'll cash it for you. See, I said, okay. And I remember I went across on a Friday, like at 5 o'clock whenever we got out, and I went in this bank, and there were lines of people waiting to get their checks cashed.
oh,
You know?
my gosh.
And that was a new experience
yeah.
for me, So I
Right.
stood in line, and hey, that was my first paycheck. I was making $28 a week. That's
Man.
But the thing, I know what it was.
Seven
I was
times your
sitting
rent.
at a desk, see, like this, and I had all these stacks of cards, data cards, with holes in the top, and I had like a big knitting needle, where I would pick up a stack of these things and run the knitting needle through one hole, series of holes, and the ones that didn't have a hole in that, they fell out. See, and so then I go through the next hole, and this is a sorter. I was like a physical sorter,
Right.
sorting. So I ended up with piles of these cards. You see.
Ah,
So I'm
sounds
sitting
like a
there.
very
This is the. Oh, I really have just remembered why I wanted. There were a lot of other guys, and there were officers around, the outside. And I talked to one guy. I said, "Hey," I said, "how much money do those guys in the offices make?" And he said, "Oh, man, about $100 a week, Wow, But the point was, there used to be this guy went by me, in shirt sleeves with long sleeves, and he had his cuffs flipped back, and I'd never seen that before. That was real cool, And then I heard somebody call him, and he said, "How you doing, Sal?" And I said, "Sal? What is that? Sal? And then in the men's room, hey, Sal, Sal, I'd never heard that before. It's Salvatore, you see.
Oh, yes, Salvatore.
I mentioned this story the other day at
Italian.
Heidi's, I guess it
Italian.
was, right? And I said, being from England, I said, I didn't know anybody called Sal.
Sally is a girl.
Yeah,
That's like Sally, right?
yeah.
Sally's a
But
bird.
I was there for 3 months. See, I was there, and then one night I was going home on the subway, which I used to do from 14th Street. And there was a Daily News on the page. You know how they. So I picked up the Daily News and looking at employment there. Maybe I can do better. See, then there was this thing, looking for men with military electronics experience.
Bingo.
Sunday. Show up Sunday afternoon at 1 o'clock, 24th Street. Well, it was the 24th Street Recording Studios for RCA. That's where that was, see. And so I went down there, took the subway down on 24th Street or whatever, and then I showed up, and all these guys in line.
Oh,
boy,
my goodness.
Oh, man.
And they all had their English accents.
Oh,
And they-
So anyway, I get to the back of the line, and I'm shuffling around, and I get in the first deck over here, So what's your name? Just fill it. Okay, here's fill out this test here. So he just handed me that. It was that quick once I got inside. I look at this test, and it's very, very simple electronics type test. It's almost like
Aced it, he aced
where's
it.
the on-off switch normally located?
He aced it.
Yeah, on the outside of the. It was like, so okay, you hand that back in again. All right, get back in line. You go then to the next room. And then, okay, sit down here now. Okay, now, this is it's a little different, how about describing, how about drawing the circuit diagram of a superhetero, something like that, see? Okay, no problem,
Passed.
Righto.
Yeah, right-ho, yeah, right.
He must be English.
So I handed that back, so the guy looked at it, he says, yeah, okay, so, and he looked at me and he said, a few other basic questions, and then he said, okay, then where do you want to work?
Whoa,
I
look at
said,
that.
I said, what do you mean, where do I want to work? I said, I have a choice. So he said, okay, so where do you live? I said, I live in the Bronx. He said, okay, so we got a branch up in the Bronx. He said, you can work up there. I said, great.
Great. Look, she lives a charmed
I'm in the money.
Wow.
29 years later,
Well, how much did you make?
How
Because
much
you
what?
made $28 at the other place. What'd you make here?
I went up to $40 a week, and with overtime.
Oh, with
Promise with
overtime.
overtime.
Okay.
There was so much work. There was so much work. There were stacks of job orders. In fact, the office in the Bronx was in a gas station,
Oh, boy.
way up north in the Bronx. And then Marty Bonnerbeck, I remember him. He sitting there with all these orders, job orders. So they had me working with a guy. I was an apprentice. See.
And that guy was Don Kelsey.
No, Don Kelsey was
not
an
yet.
apprentice with me.
Oh.
I was teaching him how
So when
to.
did you meet?
Oh, okay.
When did you meet?
Oh, gosh.
When did you meet?
Well, wait, let's not go
Yes,
rush
yes.
things.
Yeah, you're
Let's,
going
But anyway.
Well, we're gonna,
We do have a timeline.
yeah, we do. It's like
Okay.
20 of 1 here.
we'll continue
We're
this,
gonna leave it 2.
but,
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, they had a lot of vans, RCA vans, and some weren't even marked RCA yet, and it's another funny thing. I guess in my mind had not yet adjusted itself to the fact that, hey, this is a different country. They live differently here. They all have cars. Because when I was, I got off whatever it was the nearest one to the place. I think I don't know where it was really, North Westchester Avenue, maybe. It was in the Bronx, but I had to walk through, a couple of blocks to get to this place where I was ultimately going to work,
Yeah.
And there were all these cars outside a couple of the buildings, and my thought was, there must be a big meeting going on there, Well, it was just employees' cars, I had no idea that everybody had a car,
oh my
And then the other
goodness.
thing, the first night in the Bronx, that was the other